Hey there, and welcome back to the Total Potential Podcast. It's Cole. I am so excited today to be sharing a conversation with our guest, Victoria Rose. Victoria offers a perspective on what, for many of us, is a just sort of routine experience of building a family in our society, in our culture. Things are just sort of done a certain way. And one thing I love the opportunity to do with this podcast is to just open our eyes to potential new perspectives so that we can make a choice that comes from intention and comes from a space where we are deciding with our own intuitive nature, our own self, and not outsourcing all things that our body, our family are meant to do. And I think Victoria has a really beautiful and unique perspective to share with us on that today. Victoria is a certified prenatal and perinatal educator. She is a fertility and birth consultant and a traditional birth witness. She is a registered massage therapist and a Reiki master for fertility, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I think that says everything we need to know to really understand that I, as well as all of us together, will have a lot to learn from Victoria today. Victoria, thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome, Cole. Thank you so much for reaching out and making this opportunity unfold for us both.
Yeah, I'm really excited and I can't wait to just have, even like those little nuggets of like the one thing where like, oh, that clicks for me and that makes sense. And that's an opportunity for me to heal or for me to connect differently with my child or like whatever it is. I just think it's such a gift. So I'm super jazzed. But before we dive into the meat of it, I have to know, you work in a very unique space. How did you ever land here? What were some of the, more formative events that kind of marked your path into this luminous birth work?
Wow. Well, I'm always just as curious as what's going to come through when I'm asked that question. It's a really good question. I, all of what pretty much everything I'm doing in my life and all the pathways that have opened for me have really opened from my own personal experiential process. Um, Although I could trace it back, I have been able to, or I've been communicating with unborn babies
Hmm,
and even, I think, preconceived babies since I was a very small child. So I have very vivid memories actually of communicating with my brother, who's 9.5 years younger than I am. I remember sitting in my bed just visualizing a channel to him while he was growing in my mother's womb and communicating with him and having absolutely no question in my mind that
sure.
he was receiving that.
That is
I would say that,
beautiful.
yeah, they're fond memories. And there was a lot of turbulence in our family growing up. And so it was really an instinctual thing that I knew that I could connect with him to let him know that the stress and the tension that were going on between his parents had absolutely nothing to do with him.
Hmm.
And now that I'm much older and I'm in my field and I'm in my work and study and continue to study pre and perinatal psychology, I understand that these things really do have an effect. And I've
Absolutely.
seen enough at birth to know that communicating with the baby is an essential part. And I think that as children, young children especially, we don't need to learn these things. We just
Yeah,
know.
I know. I wish we could. Well, maybe you have some insight on this. I've always wondered like how we can support children in a way where we don't teach them to unlearn that
Right.
connectedness, that knowingness, because um, in so much of my life as a parent and in the work we're doing with Total Potential, like one thing that I always say is like look to our children as teachers because they haven't. forgotten how to connect. They haven't lost their own connection to their body and deeper parts of them. And I know it's not like, oh, at age 8 this thing happens, right? Like there's not this marketed point where that shifts. But I mean, first of all, how beautiful that you didn't lose that. Like so many of us,
Mm.
I don't think we lose it. We forget that we have it, I think would be maybe a little bit closer description. Um, but yeah, okay. So you have this experience where from a young age you understand that there's a channel and open communication and some receptivity that is just known, and now you get to support people in this, what for many people is a really dynamic part of their life, right? For some people it's a super beautiful experience to think about having a family, like even before the planning of the family or the interest in trying to have a baby starts, the sort of magic behind the interest in creation and all of those things. And for some people it's super scary and really filled with fear or uncertainty. And so there's this huge gamut of people's experience around having children. Help us kind of
Mm.
understand, like, what, if you think about sort of some different aspects of it, like let's take the mom first and thinking about welcoming a baby, preconception, like the whole kind of chain. What kind of things are available for a mother along that process? If it's, if you kind of step back from the quote unquote traditional, thought process behind it.
Yes. Wow. Well, you touched on a lot here. I want to back up a couple of steps because you
Sure.
mentioned a few really, really important things. One is, how do we actually keep the consciousness of babies intact from the very beginning of life? That's really what luminous birth is all about.
Mm,
And a lot of the things that conventional popular psychology have taught us are developmental are not developmental at all. And we're getting confused about this. For example, things like self esteem, confidence, connection, feeling of safety, um, communication skills, these are innate. These are not developmental. Children, babies, beings have their own built in analysis of determining whether or not their environment is safe.
right.
We, as adults, as authorities, teach our younger ones that there's actually something to be afraid of.
Mm,
For example, if you have a little kitten walking across a bridge, they are very aware of the edge. They're probably not going to fall over. In fact, I would guess they absolutely wouldn't. They have this extra sensory abilities, not even extra, just normal
yeah.
senses. And babies have those same senses. And so now we're still a little bit confused in a lot of ways. For example, um, we went from teaching, um, or how can I put this? In terms of things that are developmental and not, we have learned that somehow we must be bad because we've been so praised when we're good,
Mm,
right? And so, or we've been, I'm sure we can all think back to when we were a child, when we were expressing a lot of emotion, where we were quieted for that, or go calm yourself down, and when you feel better, come back. So we've come to a place where we know that that is not ideal, that children have emotions. We all are emotional, relational beings. And maybe all the emotions like anger or upset or all of these normal parts of us, when they come up, maybe we shouldn't put them down. Now
mm,
we're teaching children that emotions are good. And is this not like we are just innately emotional beings. And so, even the act of teaching any of these things, actually, I believe, really inhibits the entire um, self discovery and the actual potential of the development, which I don't even think we've touched.
Like even
What is the
touched.
potential
I know.
of human development, right? Because we can't back up enough to completely trust um, human potential, trust that, well, if we don't come in and teach them something, then geez, maybe they will be incapable, or, we have
Yeah.
always the best in mind and the best in our hearts. Um, but yeah, I would definitely say that many of these things are not actually developmental.
Yeah.
And you touched on something else, which is that, yeah, some people are everybody's having a different birth.
Yes.
This is just birth. This is the nature of birth. And birth embodies the mystery. Birth is completely unknown.
Completely.
You can tell us about this. You have three amazing children. So, this is the nature. I mean, birth and mystery could well mean the same thing.
Hmm.
And we are very uncomfortable with the mystery, with the unknown. And so we have been taught, interestingly, women have been taught that they need to be taught how to give birth. But the wisdom of birth is indigenous in every single one of our cells, whether we've given birth or not.
Right.
It's in us. And so, in the normal conventional model of birth, you really have to squeeze through a very tiny space in order to be considered, I don't know, safe.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay was the
And
word that came to mind.
right, in order to be allowed to have the birth that you want. And the reality is that the space is like this, and all of birth happens out here.
Yeah.
So it's setting up a very the reality is, I think that women really aren't receiving the support that they need and that they deserve.
So let's kind of take a real life scenario here, if you don't mind. So
Sure.
let's say I'm gonna have another baby. I mean, that's not gonna happen, but
Mhm.
let's just say that that was, something I was interested in. And I mean, I said this to you, but I'll say this here just in case. Full disclosures, I've had three super traditional births, like in a hospital, like very traditional births. Um, but I knew a lot less then and I know a lot more now. So it would be a very interesting experience to approach it again. So let's say I was and I was gonna come to you as a mom who has had a very traditional experience and say, you know what, I think my sense is there's something else possible for me the next time I go through this. What kinds of things might you bring to the table for me to consider in
Mm.
that scenario?
Yeah. Um, I think because you've had children already, I would be, number one, open to the possibility of having a relationship with you. And I
Mm,
think that is really everything. Women need women who get to know them,
mm,
who know, what have you been through? What has your life been like? What have your experiences been? Midwives and doctors don't really have the time to get to know a woman.
right.
So, and midwives spend more time with uh, a pregnant mother or during her pregnancy than, say, a GP. But still, an hour here and there, even if it's every week, is really nothing when it comes to really getting to know a woman,
Mm,
really getting to know what are the stories that she's holding in her body. And so really getting to know her. So I think that would be the first step, being open to that trust being there and also being open to it not being there.
mm,
To really create a space where there's choice right from the very, very beginning. From there, if since you've had children, I would be looking to just have you process those births first.
mm,
There would be a lot of information inside of those births and a lot for you to revisit, see differently, maybe re experience. Usually, the story that we're told by doctors is not at all what actually took place. And so I would be open to just listening to you talking about those stories and seeing what's there, what's underneath, what was really going on. And if you could go back to any of those moments that stand out for you and redo it in any way, what would that look like?
mm,
How would that be? Um, and inevitably, it would be a journey back to revisit your own birth.
mm,
So, because you've had children, I would say that we absolutely, it's really a good idea to go back and look and process and unpack those births. Um, but even to go even deeper, a woman, we re-experience our births each and every day of our lives. And there's an amazing midwife, an author. Her name is Sunny Carl. She wrote the book Sacred Birthing, Birthing a New Humanity. And she says it really well. It is, we're reliving our births every single day of our lives. Every day is a representation of our birth.
mm,
And this is especially so during times of change and transition. So, anytime you're leaving behind, you know what you know, and you're entering a new space of just new, whether you're leaving a relationship, whether you're entering a job and going into a new one, whether you're going from not being a mother to being a mother,
mm,
whether you're going from being unmarried to married, just as life happens, we're re experiencing that which imprinted us at the very, very beginning. This couldn't be more true when a woman gives birth.
mm,
So another thing and we can look at that again, but I think conventional prenatal care has really missed the mark. A woman, if she feels like, for example, she wants to test her urine, or she wants to measure herself, or she wants to weigh herself, if she's genuinely interested in that during her pregnancy, then these things can be useful. They can be amusing as well. Can be like really amazing to see, like, look at this amazing transformation that my body is doing. But conventional prenatal care is looking at, are you too big or too small? Is your baby too big? Is your baby too small? And really monitoring, assessing, looking for risks. And so while we're distracted with all of that, the mama who has this beaming bright light of just pure consciousness in her being, incarnate, illuminating all of the parts of her, bringing up everything that she's ever experienced in this lifetime and maybe beyond. No one is supporting her emotionally and spiritually. And the birth absolutely is a non, like, it's an experience that happens in a non-ordinary state. The body, the mind, and the spirit have to open to give birth. And so everything that that being is holding is going to open. And so anything that's been unaddressed or unresolved, or I don't even like the word unresolved, because it's not about resolving or getting rid of or clearing anything, but rather just becoming aware
Mm,
and having that woman become aware and coherent of the memories that or the beliefs that her body is holding.
yeah.
That's what comes up in birth. And if the people in the room haven't taken the time to get to know what could be coming up for this woman, then she's really in a non-ordinary state alone. I mean,
Yeah.
she is the only one that can birth her baby, but obviously, real support
Yeah.
emotionally is invaluable.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many
Mm-hmm.
things I love that you just said, and I just kind of want to stick a pin in for people to really think about and consider, even at a deeper level. One being what you said about the necessity of openness. And I also think of like release, I guess would be another word that comes to mind in order to give birth. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I think you hear so often of like first time mothers who have a really hard time delivering babies. And that's what I thought of when you said that, because there's no one around you even remotely entertaining or considering like what else is happening other than that you're trying to have a baby right now, right? Like there's
Mm-hmm.
no context or language or understanding around any of that. And it's really hard to let go and be open and facilitate that when you've never even thought for 1 second about what else needs to be open or let go or released
Mm-hmm.
for me to then proceed with something that isn't just like the word constricted comes to mind, like a
Mm-hmm.
tight birth. Does that
Yeah,
is that accurate?
absolutely. And in these conversations and in all of my work, a lot of it is actually changing the language that we use. It's very, very powerful. We use the word contraction
Mm,
for the sensations of birth. And if that word works for a mama, then that's what word we use.
mhm,
But it's worthy of considering, like, what have we actually been learning about birth? When we have this most magnificent love that anyone's ever known, that of the entire universe coming in, it's a very intense experience, I'm imagining,
yes.
not an everyday experience. The most love that exists in our universe coming in, are we closing off to that and tightening? Or are we opening and softening? And that is the part that often gets missed. And that can be applied to birth, but I think everything that applies to birth applies to life.
Mm,
When life is happening, when lots of energy is coming in, do we close or do we open? The other thing I would say, Cole, is that hormonally, lovemaking and birth are identical.
mm,
Every mammal needs the same thing to give birth. Cats go find a closet or a cupboard. Mammals need dark, unobserved space to give birth. So, going back to birth being hormonally identical to lovemaking, imagine, and particularly as a woman, but I think for anyone, really trying to soften and open and receive and trust and get into a real intimate trance like lovemaking state when you have the bright lights on and people walking in and out of the room, strangers at that, or not, family
Goodness.
members. The physiology of birth actually changes. Our physiology needs only a couple of things to give birth: dim or dark and unobserved.
Mm.
And all the other things are really helpful and supportive, like love and maybe people that really care about you and support you, maybe some candles and some all the things that make you feel beautiful and sensual and powerful. But really, biologically, we need to be in a dark, unobserved space. And so this brings us back into the language that's being used at birth, like failure to progress.
It's such a loving term.
I would say, actually, your intelligent body is so intelligent that it is just doing exactly what it knows how to do to keep you safe. It's, the woman's instincts and her very physiology is never not assessing the space to see. Eyes closed, eyes open, it's happening.
Yeah.
And so when there is distraction, when her prefrontal cortex is stimulated by people measuring her or checking baby's heart rate or beepers going off or clocks ticking or anything that actually stimulates your thinking brain needing to answer a question, um, it interrupts birth,
Mm.
and the cervix will literally stop opening. Why? Because the environment is not safe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's your body's intelligence saying, okay, well, we're just going to pause this process and we'll resume when it's safe.
Mm.
And Dr. Sarah Buckley, she is an amazing doctor and educator about birth. She's highly respected in the birth keeping field and midwifery field, and she says she's the one who coined the term the hormonal blueprint of labor.
Mm.
So she's talking about the intelligence of protecting birth physiology and what happens when you interrupt any of these natural processes that are happening, specifically the hormones. And she discusses how these things get interrupted. Like I just mentioned, a few bright lights and
Yeah.
people coming in and monitors and things like that. But she says if a woman knew that it only took about 30 minutes for her body to go back and feel safe again and for labor to continue forward, then likely they wouldn't be saying yes to the artificial hormones that are then being administered to, say, speed up the process or get
Yeah.
things going. So it's important, I think, to consider that yes, there are medical interventions, but for the most part, the medical interventions are, or those that created these medical interventions are actually giving rise to the need for said
Mm.
interventions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I'm excited that this podcast is brought to you by mkforhealth.com. Have you been looking for a powerful antioxidant to help support your immune health? Hello, of course we have. Look no further. mkforhealth.com offers an amazing product called Nutrimetrics OPC3. This product is an isotonic capable food supplement chock full of powerhouse antioxidants. Ingredients like citrus extract bioflavonoids, bilberry, grapeseed, red wine, and pine bark extracts, all incredible antioxidants. Then you have the OPCs. The oligomeric proanthocyanidins are bioflavonoids found in fruits, vegetables, and certain tree barks that have exceptional benefit to the human body. Studies have shown that these OPCs are up to 20 times more powerful than vitamin C and 50 times more powerful than vitamin E in neutralizing free radicals. Hello, sign me up for that. Nutrimetrics OPC3 also contains the only isotonic form of pygaginol in the world. Number 1, remember, isotonic, readily absorbed. Number 2, pygaginol, my new favorite word, is a natural plant extract from the bark of a French maritime pine tree, and it is the most clinically researched and potent bioflavonoid found. If you're ready to support your immune health and modulate inflammation in your system, all with incredible powerhouse antioxidants, natural extracts, and ingredients, this is your product. Go to www.mkforhealth.com to purchase your Nutrimetrics OPC3 today. That's www.mk4health.com.
Okay. One thing that's really coming up for me as you describe this is some real potential for the mother to heal.
Mhm.
I mean, the thought of going back to your own birth, I've done a little bit of work with that. I've had to ask my own mother like a lot of questions because I just don't have tons of memory that arises. Uh,
Mhm.
there's a few pictures and things that sort of have been helpful to kind of jog some of that, but say more about that process and what kind of healing and resolve can come from sort of tracking back that process.
Mhm. Well, I actually have some of my own prenatal memories that I didn't forget. I have said before, my adult life has largely been remembering that I indeed never forgot.
Hmm.
But have been very fortunate to have teachers and mentors come on my path who could accurately mirror me in a way that affirmed what it was I was remembering or experiencing, if
Sure.
you will. I also want to say that when it comes to the conversation of healing our own births, this work happens in layers. Once you open the doorway to this realm of healing, then life continues to provide you with opportunities to work at more layers, right?
Yes.
Because again, the birth and the pre birth and the conception, these are the experiences where we were imprinted. These are the early primal periods of our life where we were learning, or where the experiences that we had shaped who we are and how we are in the world. So as life continues to happen, the way in which we respond or the way in which we experience certain incidences is highly indicative, actually, of what was going on at birth
Hmm.
or before birth. So let me give you maybe some tangible
Yeah.
examples that can make it also a little more relatable for the audience as well. I was conceived as a twin. And let me first say that, I think it was William Emerson, he's a pioneer in prenatal and perinatal psychology, said that we often associate memory with what we remember.
Hmm.
And and also with what we can put words to.
Right.
But many of these memories are coming from a time in our lives that were pre-verbal. And so we don't actually this is not the way that we are remembering them. These memories are held in our body. They
Yeah.
inform the way we respond to life, respond in our relationships, experience our lives. So there's that. Just kind of saying, okay, maybe memory isn't necessarily what we cognitively remember. It's not what's happening in the brain. And then, what was the other part, Cole? You have to keep me
Well,
on
you
track.
were about to say that you were
Oh yeah,
conceived
some
as a twin.
tangible.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so the twin dynamics, and there's many different twin dynamics. William Emerson, who I just mentioned, he himself was a twin. And so he speaks a lot about this, and there's
Mm.
courses and workshops that are pre-recorded that are available, and sometimes he does live ones as well. He actually, his decades worth of study have shown that perhaps 60 to 80% of humans were actually conceived as a twin or multiple.
Wow. Yeah. That's remarkable.
It's remarkable, and it could be a very existential part of our experience, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, that isn't talked about and there isn't a lot of awareness around. So I was conceived as a twin, and my experience in utero, as I remember, is that and as life continues to reveal to me, this twin was a soulmate,
Mm.
like a real companion. And so the loss of that twin, which I'm discovering was probably actually before implantation, was very tragic for me. That was the initial separation. These wounds that we talk about around abandonment or loss or separation or rejection. This was my original wound in this lifetime. And so fast forward to my birth, and this is the memory that I really have a tangible memory of. When I was born, I remember laying in my mom's arms and looking in her eyes and just longing for her to ask me about my experience.
Mm.
Like, imagine you just finished the most heroic journey ever,
Yeah.
and nobody even thinks to ask you. Like, people are doing the laundry and flicking the switches and writing down notes, and no one's even asking. And I felt like I had lived lifetimes in the womb.
Mm.
At that point, it had already been such a journey. And I believe it is for each and every one of us. So I was really longing for her to ask me about my experience. And I've come to discover through witnessing probably thousands of people go through really deep healing experiences that had I have been able to talk about my experience then, which really was just someone having awareness that the baby is having an experience.
Mm. Mhm.
Maybe you don't know exactly what they're saying, but you can see, whoa, that's really a lot, isn't it? And being able to accurately mirror the baby is really, really important. What I felt was, wow, very confused. Why is everything that's going on around me absolutely zero reflection to my inner experience? And so I've come to discover that had I have been able to express that and that be held inside the space, that grief associated with that deep loss wouldn't have become so deeply suppressed inside of my system.
Mm.
Because at that point, it was a big part of the experience, but it had to be held all on my own.
Right.
There was no one to help me hold that.
Right.
So it was internalized.
So this brings up a really important point, which I think in our culture, society, sort of traditional ways of approaching infants and infant care is
Mm-hmm.
to really see an infant as like kind of a blank slate, as this like little being who, I'm using quotes here, doesn't know anything yet and will learn about life and learn about themselves and form a personality and all of those things. And in some ways I can understand why we have that belief, because things like verbal communication and right, like things that as adults we rely on to communicate with other people about our experiences, an infant doesn't have. But
Mm-hmm.
I can remember looking into like my very first baby's eyes, and this little kid, he's 15 now, but he was like an old, like you could just see in his eyes, like this is a wise person. Like this person has been around a few times. And so
Yes.
I think that I'd love to kind of understand more about how you see what an
Mm-hmm.
infant is born in with, rather
Mm-hmm.
than just this blank slate that life's going to inform
Mm-hmm.
after it's here.
I mean, this is everything. This is the conversation. I mean, definitely. I think it's because my own prenatal memories were so viscerally intact. We all remember our births. Children, definitely, if we talk to them about their births, from the time that they're born, they won't forget. And there's many children that remember their births and their lives in utero and
Hmm.
beyond that. So again, we've learned to forget because we're treated to forget, like you
Right.
just said. We're treated as unconscious, unaware beings. And to me, so I graduated high school and then I went to university and then I took time off and ended up going into massage therapy school. And so my first few years of practice were working in a clinical setting with other, like a multidisciplinary clinic
Hmm.
with physiotherapists and everybody like this. And somehow, naturally, pregnant women would just gravitate towards me for prenatal massage. And it instantly started happening that I could just hear ever so clearly what their babies were saying.
Hmm.
And it was very simple, clear, no question, practical advice. And it was more clear than if someone would be sitting in the chair beside me, an adult who was speaking English to me.
Hmm.
And I've come to discover that they are way more conscious than we are. And because I've been nourishing this connection with these beings that are coming to Earth now and communicating with them through their mamas, really, and their parents, I've come to really know that they are way, way more conscious than we are. They know exactly why they're coming,
Hmm.
they know exactly what they're doing. And now, when I'm guiding, adults back to revisit and gather information about their own birth and pre-birth experiences, they're actually saying the same things that I've been hearing these unborn babies
Oh,
say.
interesting.
So when you start to just look at the patterns, it's like, oh, wow, totally. So it's us that have been treating these newborns as unconscious
Yeah.
beings, but they're highly, highly aware and highly sensitive. And so I feel like they, in all the work that I do at least, and I think we'll just come to recognize this as obvious, that the baby can be included and should be included as a conscious participant
Hmm.
from the time of preconception. Again, the prenatal care has definitely taken women outside the body
Yeah.
and looking outside, right? And that we don't need to discuss it because we've touched on it, but there's so much there. I just gave a keynote presentation at Eurotas World Gathering in the south of France, which is the European Transpersonal Psychology Network. And it was the first time that I spoke out loud in front of an audience that about this deep cultural wound of separation that we have.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, in no other culture, and certainly no other species, are mothers and babies separated at or anywhere near birth.
Mm.
And in that moment, I realized, oh, wait, babies and mothers are actually separated long before birth because the moms are looking outside and they're not communicating with the baby, but everything they need to know about everything is through that intuitive, instinctual connection.
Yeah. It's
Mm-hmm.
so beautiful. And I think there's like even if I think of like a first opportunity, if you're going to be thinking about having another baby, is just the opportunity to get back in touch with your body, because so
Mm-hmm.
many of us are so disconnected from our body. And like when you talk about us being emotional beings, I mean, I work with a lot of people who can name like 5 total emotions. I mean, there's zero connection to like
Mm-hmm.
outside of the physical head. There's very little connection to the body and its expression of its environment and all of those things. And so
Mm-hmm.
just the chance to even think about getting back in touch with your body before welcoming or, you know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Which is why I think going back to revisit our own birth before conceiving or certainly during the pregnancy can be so beneficial, is because when you retrieve your own memories, you will inevitably carry that consciousness forward
Mm,
to the conception, pregnancy, and birth of your own baby.
yeah.
Um, but what I also want to say, Cole, is, and this is maybe the most important thing that we cover today, is that it truly is never too late.
Yeah. Never.
It's truly never too late. When our bodies hear the truth, when the story matches the physiology, for example, when the story matches the physiology, healing takes place. For example, I've had this conversation open with my mom for a number of years because she's never surprised when I'm calling her saying, oh, hey, so what was going on with that? um, but on one occasion, a couple of years ago, she told me a story of something that she had experienced when I was a little baby. She was a paramedic and she was working on the ambulance, and she had a little baby boy pass away in her arms. And when she told, and so when she finished her shift, she came home, and of course, with this utmost love and awe and gratitude, she picked me up from my crib to just embrace me and be in this gratitude for her
Mm,
baby. And as she told the story, she swelled with those emotions, she re experienced those sensations, and I did as well.
mm,
And something happened for me also in that moment because I understood, my body experienced that.
right.
So just actually hearing her tell the story allowed my body to process something, because she probably didn't sit there with me and say, this is what happened and this is how it happened and this is why
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
feeling like this and this doesn't belong to you. You don't have to take it into your body. Right?
yeah. Right.
But these are the kinds of things that we can do for babies. And I am definitely never proclaiming to feel or to think that I know what is best for anybody ever. It very well could be what a baby very well could need to be born in the hospital in a
Sure.
certain way, and that be what they need to fulfill their life and deliver their mission in the way that they're going to deliver it. And so I really like to take this position of, I don't know what is best, and really encourage that the baby guide the whole thing.
Mm.
When and if medical intervention is needed or is being opted for, there's something very simple that mamas or people that are around that mama can do, which is talk to the baby.
Mm.
They can say, okay, mom is going to take this drug into her body. You, and this is why, and this is what's going on. Things are going to feel very different for you in a couple of minutes. Right now, you and mom are working together. You're one, you feel her. In a couple of minutes, things are going to start to feel quite different. Even if you don't feel your mom, she's here. And when you finish this journey, she'll be right there with
Yeah.
you. So there's that, but there's also informing them, her body needs this, or, this is just an example, or she's choosing this for her body. Your body does not need this. You do not need to take this into your body.
Mm. I
So
love
just
that.
talking to babies to help them to understand that, okay, if they are going to come out in a really bright room, let them know. It's going to be shocking. It's probably going to be painful.
Yeah, right. And what a
Mhm.
simple and super tangible thing for any family to be able to do. Just open the mind
Absolutely.
to communication.
Absolutely. And if it begins preconception, it will just be what's happening through the
Right.
whole pregnancy. You know, I and for your audience and for the purpose of this amazing podcast, which is about potential, I really like to educate about these things, or just not educate, but help us all to remember these things, not for the purpose of preventing trauma necessarily, but just for the purpose of harnessing the power and optimizing the potential that is birth. And if we're talking to our babies honestly and truthfully and transparently as a human
Yeah.
from the time of preconception and then throughout the pregnancy, then and at birth and after, then they will grow remembering who they are.
Right.
They will grow as communicative beings and self-directed beings, knowing, having discernment for what's mine and what's not mine. I mean, this is something we can definitely probably agree on, that like sometimes it's really hard to know what's what and who is whose.
Yeah. Well, and
So we
to,
can keep all of that intact for them.
yeah. And I also like that separation aspect. I mean, I think so many of the problems we're experiencing in the world is because we forget that we are together and we're not separate.
This is
And if
it.
we
This
could
is it.
get that from the very beginning, that's,
Hmm.
I mean, that's a real opportunity for humanity, let alone, one baby and mother and family.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true.
Yes. Okay. You offer a lot of really interesting types of coaching and programs and like from the whole gamut, the preconception, the fertility, the I mean, you have a lot of really amazing work that you're doing. I really could talk to you about this for like a very long time, but
I
but in the
know.
interest of, making sure our audience can still move on to their next thing today, where should they go to find out more about all the amazing work that you're doing?
Well, I think most people are on Instagram nowadays. That's kind of the one place serves all.
Right?
I'm on there. I'm not doing a whole lot on there, but I'm there, and you can find me and all of my links through there. So that's at Luminous Birth.
Okay.
And my website is www.luminousbirth.earth.
Beautiful. That earth. I love that. Okay, well,
Hmm.
we will make sure that we share those in the show notes. I love that you shared just some really tangible things that we can do like right now if you're in the process of building a family and maybe you don't, maybe you're, a few weeks out from having an infant, or maybe you have a brand new infant, and there are just these super tangible practices that we can put into place right now if, you know, the time and space for working on preconception and those kinds of things has kind of passed you. I love that you
Hmm.
shared some things that we can use right now. But for those of us who maybe are still in the family building phase, I really, please go find Victoria because, oh, I just feel like there's so much healing and important work that can happen and connection. Oh, there's just something really delicious and juicy about the
Hmm.
way that we could shift the relationship and the mindset around what it means to be a parent and this little being that showed up in our lives as a whole human, not as somebody that needs like, the bits and pieces put back together, but like as a whole being, I just think is such a gift. So thank you so much, Victoria, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Cole. If I could add one more thing
Please,
that I
yes.
feel is just so important and valuable is, especially because I know a lot of your listeners are parents, and I think that one of the things that I would like to invite in is that oftentimes when we bring in this notion of, oh, the baby is feeling everything that the mother is feeling or thinking, that this has for aeons been experienced as a burdensome
Yes.
thing, right? You can attest to that. And what I'm kind of inviting in is to consider it as an incredible opportunity. There is no perfect, whatever that even means, it doesn't exist.
Yes.
And we don't want to be preparing humans to enter a perfect, peaceful Zen world. It is very clearly not that. And so there will be stress. Hopefully, there is stress. Everything that comes up during the pregnancy can be used as material to prepare
Mm,
that being for entering the world that they're entering. And it's absolutely never, ever, ever too late to do that. Again, um, it's still happening for me, and the conversation is an open-ended one. We are in this is family, and we are in relationships, and these relationships continue to open and unfold, and birth can continue to happen actually each and
yeah,
every day.
as it does, right? We wake up and here we are, reborn.
Totally.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you
Beautiful.
so much, Cole. I so look forward to another conversation again soon.
Yeah, I appreciate it very much. And thank you to everyone for listening today. And we will catch you all next time.